Doc, they know.
They knew.
Debate Amongst Friends is back. Episode 2. We're so happy you joined us today. It is Tuesday. And that means we are doing a review. But Doc, what are we reviewing?
What?
Well, that side of the room over there is pretty dark. And Doc, you're wearing your wedding ring. We must be talking about Dark Side of the Ring.
Dark Side of the Ring. Not my ring, though. My ring is full of light and sunshine. But the dark side of the other ring.
Yeah, we don't need Doc in the dark house, folks, okay?
I live out there, so don't go there. But no, we're talking about Dark Side of the Ring. If you followed us last season, we have been following the Dark Side of the Ring series just to engage our wrestling fan historians. Current product, 50-50, touchy subject. Whether you're Mark, Smark, or in between, it's tough. But if you're a historian of the game and you watch these documentaries, they're always good. This week, we had Flying. Wow. I'm having deja vu. And that's exactly what I said in the deja vu. Flying. And it's flying, right? Flying.
Yep.
Brian Pillman.
4 horsemen. Let's bring out now Brian Pillman. Brian, I'd like to know. No, I'm not nervous. I'm not nervous at all.
Hey, should be. It's live TV, Eric. What if I rifle off the 7 right here, right now? Not the 7 deadly sins. Not the 7 vials of God's wrath. But the 7 words you're not
Don't
allowed
even
to
think
say
about it.
on TV. What are you going to do then, Eric?
I'll do whatever I have to.
No, you won't do anything. You'll be get a lot of trouble.
What a great character. What a great worker. Very unfortunate events that led tragically down the path to his unfortunate death.
Absolutely.
So, Dark Side of the Ring. Flying Brian Pillman. Prof. 2-part series.
It was.
What an intriguing story.
I love the fact that they did highlight his beginnings.
Yes.
Even before he went over to WCW, of course, becoming part of the Hollywood Blondes, and just thought about like he just had the natural it.
Right.
But again, back then compared to now, that didn't mean you were going to become successful in the world of pro wrestling.
No, definitely.
And many of those other historians could tell you that you can have you could be the best worker out there. But if you didn't have the certain size, height, and mass, then you only have a certain ceiling that you're not going to be able to break through.
Right.
But he had himself a certain it. I remember fondly his tag team with Steve Austin as the Hollywood Blondes. You hear me talk about that all the time. I thought that could have been one of the best. Exactly. One of the best tag teams in WCW history.
Right.
But of course, they broke them up way too soon. I think they was only together for like 8 months or something like that. Like it was literally like a flash in the pan.
Right. And I think it's one of those things. And right before he started with the Hollywood Blondes, when you really look at what he was doing, and they mentioned it, how he kind of tore the house down with Ric Flair. You know, Flair was known for, of course, his 6-minute wrestling ability, baby. And he was in the ring with, at that time, Flair's already done a lot of things. I mean, he might not be, 10, 11, 12, 13 time yet, but he's done a lot of things by that time, and he's well known. He's got the hair. He's already riding in a limousine. He's got his alligators that he's trying to hold down. So Brian Pillman in the ring with Flair at this point if that's now, and you put Brian Pillman in with, let's say, a Roman or a Brock or AJ Styles, somebody that can work. I'm going to give those guys credit; they can work. You want to see that person take that next step, and the fact that he went from Flair to a tag team just show where we were even at that time in the minds of a booker.
Yes.
And we constantly complain about booking. They're just no good. They're just not good. Which, of course, later on we get to that part where he gets to that crazy part where he's just throwing everything out there. Booker man, we're gonna get to that a little later.
Shout out to Kevin Sullivan.
Yeah, I'm sure that put him on tilt a little bit, but
He put the whole locker room on tilt. I mean, we talk about getting put on tilt all the time, like and I guess this is the major part, of course, that people really wanted to see about during his documentary was the creation and execution of the Loose Cannon persona.
Right, and this is what I'll say, and you know me. When I hear Loose Cannon and I think crazy, now you see how Brian did this. Wide-eyed. There wasn't a lot of lip movement. There wasn't a lot of wackiness. It was, he's wild. I'm not talking about Mark Merrill wild. I'm talking Brian Pillman wild. And that goes to show why I didn't like Dean Ambrose's Looney Tune act.
In his defense too,
I don't defend him
during a PG era as well too, which didn't help.
But even still, I think Brian Pillman, if you would have put him in this PG era, he still would have been able to do it. So you scratch the gun spot, right? You scratch maybe holding the baby up in front of getting punched spot.
Okay, I was about to say, because he did a lot of stuff in ECW. Like
you take away some of those spots, sure. But somebody as creative as him, and I'm not saying Dean isn't creative, but I don't think he was as hamstrung as we're alluding to. I think it's you just have to think outside the box.
Creative freedom as well too. So by the time he was doing the Loose Cannon persona, wrestling at that time was like, hey, go out there and do it.
But even now that he has the freedom, I don't think that AEW is pretty free. Like, they're free.
Like, they had to be free?
They are free. Like,
shout out to Punk.
They don't even know how to act free. Okay. But they're giving them the freedom to go out there and cut their promos. So I think with Brian Pillman, he would be able to work. He might just not be able to work in the WWE, which of course, until last year or two, you'd only have a few places that you could really go. But I think somebody like him, similar to his son, would thrive in that smaller market, working up to get to the WWE. Hopefully they don't water you down.
And that's usually the biggest risk, and we've seen that time and time again.
But let's not jump too far ahead. Let's go back to the beginning. You said the creation of Brian Pillman, the creation of the real Lunatic and Fringe. It was all about the money.
It has always been about the money, and it's going to continue to be about the money. He wanted to make, and it was a very noble cause, he wanted to make enough money to support his 5 kids.
Right.
And, us not having kids that we know of.
Sure, I know I don't have any. I mean, I'm about to say. I know. Now, so here you go. Dark Side of the Ring, you started with. Now you talk about kids that we don't know. No. I don't have any.
Talk about your kids. He said he don't give a crap about your kids.
I don't give a crap about those kids. But go ahead.
To make enough money to support his kids, and he was essentially being paid like someone at the lower bottom end of the card.
Yeah.
But he's putting out great matches after great matches.
Yeah.
Well, the decision maker at that time, Eric Bischoff, basically told him, hey, I can't justify it based off of like how you're interactions with the crowd. I mean, the crowd loved him, of course, but it was
Of
more
course.
like, he don't see the return on investment if he was to give him
Right.
like 5 figures or something like that. I think he was
Sure.
talking about. No, 6 figures.
6 figures,
and
yeah.
he was still getting like 5 figures.
Right. And the one thing about it is that, and the part that I liked about the kids is that these weren't all his children,
No.
because I think he had, 2 or 3, and then he married a woman with 2. And it's like, so these 5 kids, he loved them equally. And that was the one part I did love about it, is that, obviously whenever you see a guy who was able to take on a responsibility of being a father to individuals who either don't have a father, or I'm just going to be an additional role model, and I really, really enjoyed that part. But he wanted to take care of him. And he played the game.
He did.
Between really three organizations. He used 3 organizations.
More or less 2, because I can't really throw an ECW into that bucket, because I don't think they would have kept them for that long.
No, I mean, when I say he used 3, I mean, he used ECW because he knew he could do things in ECW. It was a catalyst. He could do things in ECW that he couldn't do in either other promotion.
Exactly.
But
I would say this. ECW was the best platform for him to hone what would have worked and what would have not worked.
I think ECW as a whole is a perfect
because
place.
If you think about it, the same thing happened with Austin before he went to WWE.
That's true. A lot of people.
Same thing happened with Al Snow before he went back to WWE.
Mm-hmm.
Like
the whole Dudley Boy act.
Well, the Dudley Boy act was homegrown ECW. I can't really throw that one in there.
I mean, but the WWE didn't try to really change them too much. They let them do them. I know they came in with the whole stuttering thing in the beginning, but they let them do them. And then they kind of move on. But I was going to say ECW is a perfect place, I thought, to learn how to really get heat.
Yes.
Because it carried over. Yeah, it carried over to WWE or WWF at the time, where he was able to get so much heat. But then, obviously, we get to the part where he has the car accident, which, I mean, he shatters a whole bunch of things, and you don't know if it's they're saying that it's a work. He's getting plastic surgery to change his face to look like Shawn Michaels, which is ridiculous.
That's dirt sheet stuff, though.
Oh my God. Dave Meltzer has a lawyer's office with like documents all over the place, which is hilarious. And I brought up the question saying, I wonder why nobody tried to ever, hey, Dave, you're a good evaluator of talent. You've probably seen every booking scenario there is.
Mm-hmm.
Why not bring Dave in? Which, of course, Dave might have been offered that and he might have declined. But I always wanted to know that.
Yeah. And like I was telling you off the stream, I think that's more because you're going to lose your love of the business if you become part of the business that way.
I can understand that.
Especially if he signed with like WWE. Like, come on. And now we're hearing the horror stories of what happens in creative.
Right, in creative, yeah. So we have a situation here where Dave's like, I don't know what Brian's doing.
Because
his friend and that trainer, I don't know what that guy's doing either.
Well, his trainer was like, "Hey, do whatever you need to do to get paid." Like,
it's all about the money.
He literally said, "F Vince, get paid."
Get paid. In which he did, even though they knew that he would probably never really wrestle the same way again, which goes to show how great a character was.
Yep.
That he would never wrestle, as he once did, obviously with the leg injuries and some of the other ones, but they worked it, man. Like when Stone Cold beat him up, I remember that when Stone Cold beat him up and stomped on the leg and all that stuff.
Which
I remember
now
that.
Coined the phrase of Pillmanizing.
Pillmanizing, which when Cornette said it, I was like, like I know I've heard it.
Yep.
Like I know I've heard it, but I was like, I never put 2 and 2 together.
Mm-hmm.
So Pillmanizing was awesome. Jim Ross's response to a lot of things were awesome. And then we kind of get to that part, of course, with the gun spot.
Okay, let's talk about that.
So I remember this, of course. I mean, we were early teenagers. I didn't think there was anything for Vince to really apologize for. I felt at that time it was
still the beginning
risque.
of the Attitude Era, though, if you really think
Yeah.
about it. So,
but I don't think that's any different from any show or movie that we see on TV. That's the part I didn't understand, why it was so, blown out of proportion. Like, oh my God, I know kids are watching, but, at the same time, at that time, it wasn't PG still. Because, you still had women, we'll say scantily clad. You still had blood and, we'll say blood and guts dripping everywhere. Like you still had all that stuff. So my thing was cursing was already allowed to an extent. So you're not really seeing anything different from what you normally would see on any other program. So that's where I got a little confused by that part. But the spot was good. It's memorable, something that we'll never forget. And you go on to see him wrestling a few people. They show him wrestling a few people, but we know that he's just not the same. They put him on commentary for a little bit, back and forth. And then we get to I think it was Bad Blood pay-per-view. Was it Bad Blood?
Yeah, In Your House, Bad Blood.
In Your House, Bad Blood, which is In Your House pay-per-views. I mean, I miss them. Like, it kind of gave you a house show feel.
It was essentially a pay-per-view quality house show.
House show.
Where on one hand, you kind of know not a whole lot is happening as far as time changing.
Sure.
But they did a lot to help progress stories. And
exactly.
Then now it's oversaturated now.
It is oversaturated. Every time, a pay-per-view every month, pretty much.
Yes. Well, God. Too.
Oh, it was so crazy. But moving forward, obviously we know that he wound up having, I think we're saying, a heart attack in his hotel room on the day of the pay-per-view. He missed the check-in time or the call-in time for his for the pay-per-view. Jim Cornette calls the hotel like, hey, Brian Pillman checked in. That's got to be a weird thing to have to tell somebody like, hey, yeah, so about that guy, he died. And I'm like, what? I would be like, wait, say that again? Like, what do you mean he died? Like,
which is even crazy because he's talking about like, we don't even know if this is another work.
Right. And that was the part where I was like, is he serious? Like, but yeah, he had heart failure. I think they said that he had
it was a heart
disease.
Yep.
Yeah, which is really, really rough. And first and foremost, before we continue, I mean, heart disease is something definitely to get checked out. You want to make sure to know if that's something that runs in your family. So, of course, I'm a big advocate of knowing your family history and always getting checked. But with this, I'm not sure if it comes from family. Obviously, there's always the drug portion that they throw in there, the steroid portion that they throw in there. Obviously, being on the road and being a wrestler is hard enough. So all those factors probably didn't lead to a healthy lifestyle and probably attributed to the heart attack. But I still think everybody should get checked to make sure that that's not something that runs in their family or in their particular body.
Absolutely.
So a quick rundown of this. So Brian Pillman, goes to WCW, wrestles really well. He then joins. Won a few titles. He then joins Steve Austin with the Hollywood Blondes. They embrace the heck out of their roles.
Yeah.
They embrace it. Win some matches, lose some.
You have to take what's given to you and make it work.
Right. And they made it work. The hand gestures, the hair, the creativity, it all worked. So then you move forward, they break them up. He goes and says, you know what, I'm going to create this character. He becomes the loose cannon. He says, I'm going to throw away all the scripts. I'm challenging everything. I'm going to expose wrestling for what it is, and I'm going to make myself a lot of money. He then goes and does the spot with Kevin Sullivan, which is the beginning, and says, blah, 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 Booker Man. And
I respect you, Booker Man.
Booker Man, right. And at that time, we learned that Booker Man means the person that books the matches, which is something that behind the scenes, they know, but we're not supposed to know. Because at that time, kayfabe was so alive and slowly dying with the dirt sheets and whatnot. He then goes into a semi-work with Eric Bischoff.
No, it was he worked Bischoff. Stop it.
I'm going to say semi-work. He worked him a little bit, but Bischoff said that he didn't.
But think about this. Who really wants to admit to being worked in wrestling?
Listen.
No one.
Nobody.
Especially if you're in a decision-making role. No one.
Well, see, that's a thing that's kind of crazy to me, because if you know that it's possibly a work, like, why would you give them a real release? You know what I mean? Like, that's the part that was kind of weird. But then again, it's like, why not sign the extension?
Exactly.
And then not sign the extension and then tell Eric, like, hey, can you send me just give me a document that says that I've been released, so I can take it and work it, but either way, he gets his release. He goes to ECW, goes crazy, again, learns how to get heat, then gets in the car accident right when he's about to get signed. He gets in the car accident, has everything going on. Then he signs with WWE, and the rest is what we went over. Yep. But if you haven't watched it, there's so much more involved. I mean, we hit the major parts here.
Yeah, but we do need to touch on after the death and that interview the day.
I mean, I didn't put it past him. I didn't find it to be surprising. That's why I wasn't going to touch it. But she didn't have to do the interview, nor did she have to answer the question. She could have did exactly what Brian Pillman would have did. She could have said, "I just told you that I wasn't going to answer that. You just told me that you weren't going to ask me that." She could have said that right then and there on that interview, but she took the PC route and answered the question. Me personally, I would have been like, "Oh, well, I know we just said we weren't going to talk about this, so I'm not sure how to answer it." Like, I would have just said that, but it happens, But of course, you have Brian Pillman Jr., who, pretty much got abused, both by the men, I guess, in the lives of the women, and apparently the dogs. I thought that part was insane. That you would train a dog to attack a kid. But I mean, I don't want to give too much away because I really want people to watch it. I mean, it's really good. Obviously, we're filling in some of the details and some of the holes, but it's really, really good. And I would recommend you go and watch it today or sometime this week, as well as Dark Side of Football. I thought that was pretty good and something that we'll definitely try to cover in the future. But with that, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Debate Amongst Friends right after this.
Thanks for tuning in today to Debate Amongst Friends. Make sure you listen to today's episode on all of your podcast streaming app, or you can listen to us on debateamongstfriends.com.
And be sure to watch tonight's play-in tournaments games as the Indiana Pacers go against the Charlotte Hornets, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then the Boston Celtics take on the Washington Wizards at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But with that, we've had a great show. We appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for more news, more analysis, and the reads.